Welcome to episode 62 of the Narrative Wargamer Podcast. I am Tony Rhodes, and tonight I'm joined once again by Mr. Daniel Wellington.
Hello.
And Jonathan Sharpe.
Good evening, good evening.
So yeah, it's the three of us tonight, and we have, for once in the lifetime of the podcast, we have a returning topic, believe it or not, because tonight is going to be the second time we've done a Necrons on Crusade episode.
Yes. How has it changed?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely changed quite a lot.
More than the Tyranids one, then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, funnily enough, so in the theme, mostly, of the codexes so far in 10th edition, it seems like the Space Marines and the Necrons have got quite an overhaul from their original Crusade rules in 9th edition, which is quite telling, as they were also early codexes for 9th ed, whereas the Tyranids are the ones which seem to have been part of the more stabilised and established Crusade systems, and they remained relatively similar and just updated for 10th edition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think obviously it'll be our main topic a little later on in the show, but it's going to be interesting to hear from Sharpe, who finally has a copy of the Necron Codex in his hands.
Yeah, it got lost in the warp. I was fully expecting it on the day of release. I was really excited, and it just disappeared. But it arrived.
It was lost in a hyperphase oubliette.
Probably, yes. The translocation system failed to ignite, and therefore it didn't arrive in the right place.
It's all fine, though.
Yeah.
Royal Mail have since been purged of their destroyer virus.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Maybe Trazin had it on his on his museum somewhere in his archive.
Yes, hidden away on Slemnus, which actually, by the way, I did recently finish listening to The Infinite and the Divine.
Oh, it's so good.
It is.
I've got that book for my holiday read, so I'm looking forward to it. I've heard good things about it, so I've put the Horus Heresy down for a book, and I'm gonna read The Infinite and the Divine.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so funnily enough, since this is something that I've been meaning to post about on like Instagram for a little while now, just my thoughts on the book. I guess I'll give a quick rundown of some of the things here. Now, obviously, Sharpe, and for listeners, it's going to be spoiler free.
Yeah, thank you.
Like just about the concept of the book and all the rest of it. And for anyone listening who isn't aware, The Infinite and the Divine is one of the Black Library novels of recent years that really has become popular with the community. Like, it's one of these really talked about books, and I can see why. It's so much fun. Like the whole general premise of the book is obviously like this conflict or rivalry between Trazin the Infinite and Orican the Diviner, and how that rivalry plays out over 10,000 years. So it's quite a time scale, for the book to be dealing with and handling. And yeah, it's interesting how it's basically it starts off set in more or less just pre-30k sort of time, probably like 29k or whatever, something just previous, like that precedes the Great Crusade. And the idea being that while the majority of the Necron race are asleep and the Great Time of Awakening is not due for another 10,000 years, there are a few members of the Necron tier who have obviously, well, not the Necron tier, the Necrons, who have awakened early and are, just acclimatizing to the universe as it now is, and that includes Trazin and Orican and a few other Necron characters and so on. And it's really interesting seeing the way their society is built and like their view of the universe and everything. And it does a really, really good job of getting in the mindset of what it's like to be an immortal being who, like, the passage of time is just so different to you than it is to
Yeah.
what we would perceive as human readers. You know, like there's a funny like little quipped line at one point where quite often, as you would imagine with this story, between chapters often jumps couples of hundreds of years or thousands of years, you know, to be like, oh, the next time something significant happens in this rivalry is like 2,000 years later, and then 200 years after that, and then so on and so on. There's a line sort of relatively early on in the book where Trazan's talking about he's been collecting like a couple of different marks of Space Marine armor, and he had an opportunity recently to acquire some new ones when the humans had that little civil war of theirs.
Right, yeah.
And like that, the whole concept of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy is just a like curious bit of like human society that just happens in the background, like watching a group of gorillas in the wild developing some sort of interesting social hierarchy. Just like that's how like just detached he is from it.
Yes, I'm looking forward to reading it. I've only heard good things about it, so I'm quite excited.
Yeah,
I've got my current book to finish reading. I've got a couple of chapters of that, and then that's my school holiday treat when I can find some time.
So yeah, I suppose my point to all that is that I do find that actually the Necron race and the Necron lore as a whole seems to have been going through another sort of resurgence recently, like from Games Workshop, and there's been a few other Black Library novel releases. I think is it the Thrice Dead King series is the other current Necron series?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously we've had the whole recent developments in 9th edition with the Return of the Silent King, and I've not had a chance to read it yet, Sharpe, but apparently in the new Codex there's a bit more about not necessarily a civil war, but whatever dynastic conflict there is going on between the Silent King and Imhotep the Stormlord, who I think is meant to be.
I've not read it myself yet. I've not had a chance to read the lore. That probably with a cup of tea at the weekend. But yeah, I mean, it's expanded on what was in the 9th edition Codex, which obviously had a lot more on the Silent King anyway, because he came back. So I'm looking forward to it. So it's good.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting into the mind space of what it is to be a Necron. You know, like the way their dynastic society works and behaves, the way that they have different perceptions on things, and the different like ways that they're as much tied to honor systems and political intrigue as humans are or any other race, and actually seeing it through the eyes of these functionally immortal beings and the way they play out their schemes against each other is just really, really fascinating. And I think it's starting to come through more in the wider lore of the race, as well as just like in detailed Black Library novels.
Yeah, I think it's good that the past, I don't know how many years, 5 years or so, Games Workshop has started putting out more books that are focused on like not just the Imperium and not just Space Marines or the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, traditionally you've typically had like two archetypes of book, haven't you? Which is either an Imperial like perspective novel from the point of view of Space Marines, which is in order to see all the over-the-top heroics and dramatics that Space Marines go through and be these mighty, monster-slaying heroes of, myth and legend writ large in a sci-fi environment. Or the Imperial perspective book written from the point of view of some variety of basic human, be it a guardsman or an Inquisitor or whatever, basically a non-Space Marine, in order to perceive the horrors of the universe for what they are compared to you, a mere man.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean I really like the Eisenhorn trilogy, and I think that does a really good way of sort of giving a viewpoint of how horrible the universe is, because you see it from a kind of a human perspective. But probably like my favourite book that I've ever read from the Black Library is Gav Thorpe's Path of the Eldar book, which is obviously a trilogy of books that just gives a great viewpoint of Eldar society and how things change. And I got the omnibus with all three in, and I think I just literally like read straight through all three of them in sort of 2 days, because it was just brilliant. So it's great to see it from other perspectives and other races, and it's not just Space Marines, super heroic, everybody else gets killed by them.
Yeah.
I've also read that series of books, and they are also some of my favourites. And one of the main reasons for that is because of the fact it gives you this insight into a non-imperial faction in the universe and like the day-to-day lives of those characters.
Yeah.
Like, again, no spoilers for the Path of the Eldar series, but like it starts out with the main character in the first book, who is he's an artist, he's a sculptor.
Yeah.
And he goes through a bunch of internal strife about that leads him to taking up the Path of the Warrior and becoming a Striking Scorpion and so on. But it's really funny and really clever how those books, they basically, from an Eldar perspective, they kind of start out like a teen drama, don't they?
Yeah. And it's funny how like all three books are essentially the same story, but are all very different because of the different perspectives of the three main characters. That you're like, oh, I remember this bit in the last book. Oh, I see what they're doing with this now. I'm gonna see this again in the next book as well, but from a different perspective. It was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really clear. It's a really unique piece of like writing technique that I've not really seen done many other times before. Where it's set around this trio of friends. So these three different like Eldar who live on the craft world, and how they all end up going from the three paths they start out on and transitioning to these three different paths, which are what the three books are about. And how their lives intertwine and separate and intertwine again and so on. And like you say, Sharpe, it's basically the same overarching story across all three books, but told from the three different perspectives. And it's really funny when, you're right, there are some scenes that are literally the same conversation you've read before in the previous book.
Yeah.
So the dialogue is the same, but the thought piece between it, like what it says, like the characters are thinking or feeling in response to what people are saying, is obviously the other person's perspective the second time around, and it's really interesting and clever. Especially how, so I think it's the second book in the series is the one that follows the character who becomes a Farseer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously as part of being a Farseer, you learn to see and perceive possible futures, and again there's a fun little mechanic in that where they have the character in the second book foresee possible events, including what you as the reader know one of them to be the actual event that plays out for the first character in the first book. So it's interesting having that sense of perspective where as a Farseer they can see these possible outcomes and they try to manipulate, to the best one to the benefit of the Eldar. But you as a reader also know where it is going to end up because you know what that future scene is and how it plays out. So it's a really interesting read.
Yeah, I can heartily recommend it.
Yeah, so I think the first one in the series is Path of the Warrior.
It is. Path of the Warrior, Path of the Seer, and Path of the Outcast, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. So again, if you're looking for some Xenos perspective Black Library books, definitely check those out.
I hear the Orc ones are good as well.
Oh, the Orc ones.
I mean, I've started it now, and I've got 2 Orc players in the. So yeah. I
mean, the Orc ones are worth special mention because of the new Black Library reveal, the new Black Library character model.
Yeah.
Oh, what are your thoughts on this one, Dan? You must have seen Mr. Warboss Ufhak Blackhawk by now.
Yes, love it. I obviously love the books. Mike Brooks is a good man for writing lovely orc things, and my initial thought is that I'm so close to having an official Red Tooth mini.
so close.
I see where you're going.
Yes. I guess if you haven't read the book, it's not a spoiler to say that in Brutal Cunning, one of his his best mate is called Red Tooth, and he's a particularly stupid orc.
Well, even by orc standards.
Yeah.
So, funnily enough, Brutal Cunning is one I have not actually read yet. It is on my to-read list, and I will probably get to it in the near future. And the fact that there is now a second book in the series coming along, which is, what's it called? The Big Dagger.
Yeah, so he also did War Boss, which is not in the same... Well, it's tangentially related, but not not a direct sequel or anything.
I was going to ask about that because, the Black Library book War Boss is the other recent release in orc-based novels from Black Library, and I wasn't sure whether or not it was in some way related to Black Cunning. No, not Black Cunning. Brutal Cunning.
Yeah, very, very loosely.
Yeah. Right, okay.
You absolutely do not need to read either of them in any particular order.
Yeah, I can imagine that being the case. I mean, I am looking to pick up Brutal Cunning soon, because that is one that I've been meaning to get ever since it first came out. So the fact there's a second book on the way, I think just really incentivizes me now to get the first one and actually get into the series. But yeah, funnily enough, the model looks spectacular. It's one of these odd things where actually a not even non-mega armored. Funnily enough, one of the things that I think has actually been lacking in the orc range throughout most of its lifetime has been a good just war boss model. There hasn't really ever been many, because we have the original sort of sculpts of what it was just to be a generic war boss back in 3rd edition.
Yeah.
And that never really got a proper update until the Black Reach box set came around. And even then, the war boss in that was just, the mono pose war boss only available in the starter set, so never released separately.
Yeah, they did the I can't remember what he's called, but the updated war boss version that I assume is the current kit, that is based on that one but modified slightly.
The one with the squig?
Yeah. But
the one with the squig and the power claw where the middle finger is actually a buzzsaw.
Yeah, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he has a name. I can't remember what he's called, but it's one of those funny models where he was released as part of a kit where he therefore had a name, but he wasn't a significant person. He wasn't a special character model, so he didn't have special character rules. He doesn't. I don't believe he has a dedicated novel to him, or if he has now, I think that's come about after the fact.
Yeah, I don't know
after he existed as a
else.
model. Yeah,
he was just named for a box set.
Yeah, because funnily enough, I think the Primaris Space Wolf captain or lieutenant, one or the other, on the opposite side of that box set was equally a named Space Wolf, but not an actual special character.
From Dragon Days or something.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just funny how I don't think that there's ever really been a sort of decent just orc war boss model, because even we never really had an official mega armored one until the recent release, and before then people just used to kit bash mega armored war bosses out of the old Gazgul.
Yeah.
So to see this boss Blackhawk as a fully realized, really quite dynamically posed orc war boss model, I think is great. I think it just looks spectacular, even if he is, a bad boon with a ridiculously over the top custom rifle.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's a spoiler to say that it's the gun from the shock attack from the shock jump dragster.
Yeah, I mean, so again, as a seasoned orc player, I can recognise that is a custom shock rifle, which so far we've only seen on the shock jump dragster. So yeah, I assume there must be a scene somewhere in Brutal Cunning where he rips that off of one and decides to just wield it as a handgun.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, one of the things I think is really nice about him is the fact that he's wielding a hammer, a weapon that is not typically seen very often in the orc range, but which also I think is a very orky weapon.
I believe it's called the Snaz Hammer.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is going to be the foundation of many war boss conversions, because I think it just looks great as an war boss model, and I really hope that we get something akin to this in the future at some point. For just a generic war boss who's maybe a multi-part kit with a few weapon options.
Yeah. I mean, well, the Orc Codex coming out at some point in the not too distant future. We know there's going to be at least one model released for every book they're doing, right? So who knows? Maybe Plastic War Boss.
I won't be surprised if maybe, say orcs get the treatment where they're a codex that gets just one new model, like one new character model.
Yeah.
Assuming that it isn't some kind of new unit like the Scatteros sniper, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we saw a new War Banner, because that is quite a dated model now, which I think they could do some really interesting stuff with. With new modern
the weird
modeling
boys
techniques.
also.
I was going to say the weird boy could do with updating as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. It's one of their few fancast models left in the Orc range, I think. Actually,
it's funny because they brought an Orc Psyker out in the last one, and I don't know why that couldn't just have been the weird boy.
Yeah. The
Were
what's
boy.
he called now? He's called the Were Boy. That's it. Yeah. I was going to call him the War Boy, but that's not right.
Maybe it was supposed to be a weird boy, but they just did a typo.
Yeah.
Boy, that'll do.
Well, I mean, he got a bit of a token data sheet simply because if you built, he only comes as part of the War Rig, and if you built it as the War Rig, not the War Tower or whatever it's called.
The Kill Rig.
Is one the War Rig and one the Kill Rig? Is that what it is?
Hunter Rig.
Hunter Rig.
It's the one that's just a transport, and the Kill Rig's the one that has the Psyker on it.
Yeah, if you built it as the Hunter Rig, then you have that model spare.
Yeah, you can put him on a base standing around.
Yeah, that's the only reason he got a data sheet, really, because there's nothing different about his data sheet other than exactly what he does on the Kill Rig, but just put on the profile of a weird boy.
Yeah.
I think he probably does something totally different now. I can't remember. But yeah, he used to just have the same psychic power list.
So it will be interesting to see a new weird boy as well. Actually, that would be quite good, especially if he's like lifting off the ground with orky green lightning blasting off him or something. Something really nice.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they could do something pretty spectacular.
Yeah. But yeah, so funnily enough, I think that's a bit more of a deep dive into some Black Library recommendations.
Yep.
I was expecting the start of this episode to be, but yeah.
But a floating figure with crackling green lightning model. What does that remind you of? A new Necron?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a point. Sharpe, did you end up picking up the new Translocation Lord at all? Has he
I
arrived
haven't yet.
pre-order?
I'm gonna see what whether my family took some hints. Because I'm only going to need one, so I will see what happens. And if I haven't got him under the Christmas tree, then I'll probably pick him up in the new year and paint him up, because I'm quite looking forward to painting him. I think he'll look good in blue and silver and purple.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, in your dynasty colour scheme will be really nice. What sort of, out of interest, what are you planning to do, like the translocation energy, like playing around? Is that going to be purple?
It'd be purple, yeah. Purple sort of building towards a kind of a light, sort of, through kind of Slanesh grey and then into a white, and then on the front and the back I'll have that, and it'll match up to the weapon as well, I think. So that you've got 2 points of focus of the same colours.
Lovely. Well, once you've got hold of him, hopefully, and given him a nice new paint job, you'll have to tell us all about the glorious crusades that he is going to go on, because it sounds like he's got a brand new crusade system for his dynasty to dive into.
He absolutely has, yes. I mean, for those people who played Necrons on Crusade in 9th edition, it was sort of a tale of two stories, wasn't it? Initially, it was a little bit, I don't know, pants, because all that you got for doing well in battles was just an extra name added onto the end of your name of your warlord, and I suppose that was quite fun in some respects, but it didn't change the dynamic of your army in any way, shape, or form. And then I think Games Workshop realised that, because they put an update in White Dwarf sort of 60% of the way through the edition, didn't they? And that was quite good.
They did.
So I mean, I know we talked about that in the past, so I was really interested to see what they were going to do with the Necrons, and what they've done is really sort of fluffy. It's really sort of narrative. It really fits in with the theme of the army. And the idea of the Crusade runs for Necrons is that you're awakening a tomb world. Okay, so obviously, warriors are rising. You've got your canoptic units, waking everybody up, and so it's built around 3 systems. Okay, so you've got a command system, a reanimation system, and a translocation system. Okay, so the command system is based around your characters and heroes. Your reanimation system is based around your reanimation protocols, and your translocation system is based around your sort of movement and your ability to sort of deep strike in or take people off the board in that respect. So at the start of your crusade, you have what's called 3 awakening points. And the idea is that as you go through your crusade, you're going to allocate those points to the different systems. Now you can allocate all 3 to the command system if you wanted, or you could put 2 into one of the systems and 1 into another, or you could put all 3 into different ones. Okay, but in order to allocate one of your awakening points to one of the command systems, you've got to complete an agenda. So each of the 3 systems has an awakening agenda that you can choose as one of your agendas at the start of the battle. So you can't choose 2 of them. You've got to choose either to go for the command system one, the reanimation system one, or the translocation system one. So the awakening agenda for the command system is called Subjugation Decree. And this agenda is each time your warlord's unit destroys an enemy unit, your warlord gains 1 XP. If your warlord gains 3 XP or more in a battle as a result of this, you can select a command system bonus to activate, and you must allocate 1 awakening point to do so. So if you complete that, if you get 3 XP because your warlord's unit goes around killing lots of things, then you can allocate 1 of your awakening points to the command system.
Right. So just quickly, for anyone who perhaps this is the first time listening to one of our On Crusade episodes, or you recently discovered the show, if you've not tried Crusade before, the agendas basically are in place of secondary objectives in like a standard game of 40k. So if you're playing a Crusade mission, you'll have your primary scoring for the mission, and then each player selects one of these agendas from either the core Crusade rules or, like the ones we're discussing here, your faction-based ones. So this is trying to achieve these is like literally half the battle, as it were, isn't it?
And actually, they're a lot more fun than secondary objectives, because actually, in some cases, like what you achieve from your agendas in the long run can be a lot better for you than just winning the battle by winning the primary. So actually, in some cases, you'd probably ignore the primary and go, well, I actually want to complete this agenda because it's going to make my army better in the long run.
Yeah.
So I think they're a bit more fun than secondary objectives.
This is one of your sort of like favourite points about Crusade, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, the agendas encourage you to kind of keep playing even in a losing cause.
Yeah. So you say that for the Necrons, from what we know currently, from what you've told us, you've got these 3 systems. Each system has 3 potential, like, system upgrades, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and,
system bonuses,
system bonuses. And when you complete an agenda in a game that's related to one of those systems, you can then assign one of your 3 total awakening points to one of the 3 options for that system.
Yeah. So if you want to have a look at that there, so like if we stick with the command system, imagine your warlord's got its 3 XP. You can allocate an awakening point, and there are 3 different system bonuses. You can have harmonized dynastic hypodermis, which means at the start of the battle, you can select a character unit and add 1 to the toughness characteristics of models in that unit until the end of the battle.
Interesting.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, that's also good, isn't it? Yeah.
Also worth noting, I absolutely love Necron naming conventions.
Yes.
The names of all these things are just brilliant.
Yeah, they are. Yep. So moving on to servile preservation protocols. At the start of the battle, select 1 character unit. Each time a bodyguard model in that unit is destroyed by a melee attack, if that model has not fought that phase, roll 1d6. On a 3+, do not remove it from play. The destroyed model can fight after the attacking model's unit has finished making its attacks and is then removed from play. So you get a little bit of fight on death.
Nice.
Or you could go with a third one. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Remastered deficiency. Once per battle round, you can target a Necron's character unit from your army with a command reroll stratagem for 0 CP. You can do so even if you've already targeted a different unit with that stratagem this phase. So that basically gives the Overlord rule to any character unit in your army.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's the command system. I mean, they've all got fairly good things in there. So if you were looking at the agenda for the reanimation system, basically you keep a note of all the wounds that you get from your reanimation protocols, and for every 12 wounds you recover, your warlord gets an XP, and if you do recover 12 or more wounds, you can allocate an awakening point into the reanimation system. And there's 3 system bonuses there. Rapid reanimation. Once per battle round, you can reroll the roll for 1 unit in your Crusade army's reanimation protocols. You could have the resurrection flux. So while a unit is below half strength, add 1 to the result of that unit's reanimation protocols roll. And that's the whole game. I think that's a really good one.
Ooh, that's good, yeah.
Yeah, so, the more you kill them, the better they get at getting up. And then there's the anastasic contingency. Once per battle, after an enemy unit has caused a unit from your Crusade army to go below its starting strength, that unit can use the reanimation protocols ability. So you shoot a unit, you kill something, and then it gets straight back up again.
Cool.
Okay, so you get like an automatic out-of-sequence reanimation.
Yeah, for once per battle. Yeah, which in the right unit, that's going to be pretty nasty, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
units like I was going to say units like destroyers and so on will really benefit from that in like a clutch moment.
Yeah,
I can't help
Sorry, Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help but noticing that agenda seems a lot easier than the other one.
Yes. Yeah.
I did think that as well.
I would agree. And I also think that probably early on in your crusade, those reanimation ones are probably going to be more useful than the command ones anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, I suppose it's up to you, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the translocation one, its agenda is basically you at the end of the battle, you can select up to 3 Necron units within 6 inches of your opponent's battlefield edge, and each of those units gains 3 XP. And if you've got 3 or more units that gain XP as a result of that agenda, then you get the translocation one. I won't run through all of them.
I mean, it's fair to say that one seems trickier.
Yes.
To complete the agenda, you need to have 3 units in your opponent's deployment zone.
Yeah, and like the reanimation protocol ones are going to be easy because you're going to lose. You're going to roll reanimation all game. You're going to probably get 12 wounds back over the course of a game, aren't you? So yeah.
Could you imagine that one game where you're acting pissed off because you didn't reanimate 12 wounds because you're doing that well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, you'd need 36, wouldn't you, to get the 3 XP? But you'd think over the course of a game, if you'd launch your army forward, then you're probably going to get those wounds back.
I can imagine you could get 12 back from like one squad of warriors.
Yeah, you would think so over the course of a game.
So what sort of bonuses do you get from the translocation system then, if you put some awakening points into it?
So there are 3. The first one basically, once per turn, you can choose a unit that arrives from Deep Strike, and that unit gets reroll hits.
Ooh, nice.
Which is quite good, especially if you're using the new detachment where you can take lots of Necron units off at the end of your opponent's turn and put them back on. That would be really useful. There's Dimensional Catacombs. This one I like. So before the start of the battle, you can select up to 3 Necron's infantry units from your Crusade army. Those units have the Scout 6-inch ability, and while using that ability, they can fly. So you get 3 Scout moves at the start of the game.
Cool.
I think that's fairly similar. It's fairly similar to the old free 6-inch move at the start of the game, which was pretty much in every Necron army in the last edition, wasn't it? And then there's Trans-Temporal Acceleration. So once per battle in your command phase, select 1 Necron's unit from your Crusade army. Until the end of the turn, add 2 to advance and charge rolls made for that unit. So you've got a bit of a pacey unit once per game, going to shoot up the board. So you're going to try and hopefully meet these agendas. You're going to choose to allocate your awakening points to each of these systems. Obviously, you're probably not going to get all 3 out in 3 games unless you're very good, but eventually you're going to get all 3 of your awakening points into one of the 3 systems, whether it's all in the same one or a mixture. And once you've done that, you basically unlock what's called your Command Master System abilities. And these are really, really quite good things that you can use in game. Okay, so each system has got a Master System ability that's got 2 different options that you can choose to use. So if you've got points in the command system, the one with the heroes, the Command Master System ability for that system is called Directive Override. And this one says, once per battle, at the start of your command phase, you can use this ability. If you do, until the end of the phase, you can reroll battle shock tests taken for Necron unit from your Crusade army. Which is, if you have a lot of battle shock, then that might be quite useful. Or, once per battle, at the start of your command phase, you can use this ability. If you do, until the end of the phase, add 1 to the objective control characteristic of Necron units from your Crusade army. So,
+1 OC to just everything for a turn.
Just everything. So if you think you're getting a bit thin on the ground at the end of the game, You've got points in the command system. You can choose to use this once per battle to start your command phase. Now, it's great, and I'll talk about some of those in a minute, but what you need to realize is that once you use your command master system ability, you're going to lose awakening points from your system. Okay. Now, so it's not, and it isn't just if you've used that system. Okay, you have to roll a dice, and you lose up to D3 of your awakening points. So you could technically use a command master system, okay, and then roll a 3 on that dice and have all 3 of your awakening points removed from your systems, and obviously you then lose the bonus that they're attached to as well.
That's spicy.
It is, yeah. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, so you've got to weigh up how useful is this going to be. I do need this objective control to hold on to 3 objectives and win the game, but I could technically then lose all the bonuses that I've accrued in my army over a period of time. So you've got some difficult decisions to make there.
Yeah.
So before you even tell us about the other 2 potential command, because I'm understanding there are like 2 other multi-choice options in the command protocols as well.
So for each of the systems, there's a master system ability that's got one or the other.
So I'd say before you even tell us about the other 2, the thing that this already I think leans into really strongly is specifically for sort of like campaign play with the Necrons, because yes, the Crusade system is often billed as and can be played as essentially like a solo campaign system with other passers-by, if that makes sense, other players who are also playing Crusade. But in a scenario where you've got like a group of friends or a club or whatever that are running a Crusade campaign, this says to me that this is the kind of thing where you as the Necron player, you'd probably save popping off your command protocol bonuses, your master systems, for that key campaign turn, like that key battle in the campaign phases. We're like, right, if our alliance wins this round, we win this phase of the campaign. Like, saving them for those tactically important games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big decision, isn't it? I don't think you've seen too many other armies where once you've started to accrue and build up, the things that you're getting in your army, it's very rare that you would ultimately lose the bonuses you've got, because obviously as soon as you lose those awakening points off your systems, then you lose those extra system bonuses that you put in your army, whether that's re-rolling one of your reanimations, or if you've put on the resurrection flux, where if it's below half strength, you're adding 1 to your reanimation rolls. Now, the wording of the rule states that you lose D3 points starting from the system that you've just used the master system from. So if you rolled 2, you'd lose 1 from that system, and then you could choose 1 from elsewhere. You have a bit of a choice. But I know, and the way that I rolled D3, as you'll quite rightly remember from a recent game we played where you kept making me roll mortal wounds. I rolled 3 on D3 quite a lot when it's not in my favour. So I can just imagine that being really, really irritating.
Yeah, I think my demons made your Space Marines fail like 4 battle shock tests when they were in the Shadow of Chaos, and I think every single time it inflicted 3 mortal wounds on your
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, every time I rolled 3 on the D3 mortal wounds. Yeah. So maybe I get someone else to roll it for me.
So go on, tell us then about the other 2 master command options for the other 2 command systems.
So if you go to the reanimation system, and as we've said, this is probably the one where you're going to probably get some of your awakening points in quite easily. It's the Contra Mortis protocol. You can either, once per battle, when a Necron's unit uses its reanimation protocol's ability, you can use this ability. If you do, that Necron's unit can immediately use its reanimation protocol's ability a second time. Or once per battle at the start of your command phase, you can use this ability. If you do, until the end of the phase, each time a Necron's unit from your Crusade army uses Reanimation Protocol's ability, you can add 1 to the result.
Ooh, okay, so that's quite a few wounds army-wide, isn't it? Because basically that's plus 1 wound for every unit.
Yeah. So that might be the difference between if you've got a multi-wound unit, you might need to have at least 2 wounds to bring something back into the army. So actually guaranteeing you're going to get 2 or 3 wounds back might mean that Wraith unit gets another model put back in, or those destroyers get another unit put back in. So useful.
I'm guessing there'll also be a few options and upgrades and abilities in the main codex, which probably also supplement that. Some things that already enhance reanimation in some way.
Yeah, so you've got the Canoptic Reanimator that enables you to do 2d3 rather than 1d3. So obviously that would do that twice. I think the Resurrection Orb's not as good as it used to be, thankfully, because that was one of the most oppressive things in the index, doing reanimation in your opponent's turn as well. Now it's a once per game bonus. I can't remember what it is. I think it might be D6 back into the unit once per game or something. But obviously, if you use that at that time, you get +1 as well. So, in at the right time, it might be really, really useful. But obviously, there's a downside to it. And then in the translocation system, it's got my favorite of all of these Master System abilities. So obviously, this is the one where you would have to get 3 units within 6 inches of your opponent's battle edge to be able to put a awakening point into it. But it's called Spectral Relocation, the Master ability here. So the first one is once per battle, after both players have deployed their armies and determined who has the first turn, you can select up to 3 Necron's infantry units from your army and redeploy all of those units. When doing so, any of these units can be placed into strategic reserves regardless of how many units are already in strategic reserves, which is kind of the Deceiver's ability, isn't it? So you could take the Catan Deceiver's ability without having to take that model. But the best one, this is my favourite one by a country mile. Once per battle, at the end of your movement phase, select 1 Necron's infantry unit from your Crusade army and remove it from the battlefield and place it into reserves. You can select another Necron's infantry unit from your Crusade army that is in reserves and set it up as close as possible to where the previous unit was and not within engagement range of any enemy units. Until the end of the battle, the unit that was placed into reserves has the Deep Strike ability if it did not already have it. So basically, you take 1 unit off, you put another unit back on, and then the one that was taken off has got Deep Strike as well. So that unit of Necron warriors that was just in front of your unit is suddenly going to be a unit of Scorpec destroyers. Okay, and they're only 2 inches away. And I just think that
switcheroo.
Is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is not just an uppy-downy ability, that is a full-on switcheroo ability. That's brilliant.
Yeah, even though it's quite hard to get that agenda, because you're committing to getting 3 units, near your opponent's battlefield at the end of the game, and there's potential for losing all of your awakening points by using this ability. You just want to use it, wouldn't you? Just to look at your opponent's face when you did it.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah. Have you got anything nasty? Well, I do, but let's just see how that pans out. Yeah, I think it's great, and that just made me chuckle when I read it.
Again, to me, that just reads so much like this is the sort of thing that you play with your mates that you've been doing in your campaign for 8 weeks or whatever, and using it at those key moments in the grudge match against that particular opponent that you've had previous encounters with in the campaign.
Yeah. So I think it's quite an interesting system. It's certainly far more involved than adding a few rolling on a table and adding a net onto your wall.
So So I'm right in thinking, from the way you've described it, so say you've done the sort of like balanced approach, and over 3+ games, you've completed all 3 agendas for the 3 different systems.
Yeah.
You've put 1 awakening point into each.
Yeah.
And then in that game, presumably if you wanted, you could still pick an agenda that applies to one of the command systems.
Not unless you've got an awakening points to use. Although there is a caveat to that, which we'll probably get to in a minute. I think you can only choose them if you've got an awakening point to still allocate to a system.
Yeah. Because what I was going to say was, would you be able to pick an agenda to achieve, say the whole, reanimate 12 wounds plus?
Yeah.
Because you planned on using one of your master code systems in that game. So you're going to have at least 1 slot available at the end of the game to potentially then complete that agenda and put a point back into the system. But if you can't, because you need to have some unspent points at the start of the battle, then you're going to have to spend it. Say, best case scenario, you lose 1 system point when you use your master code, and you're going to have to spend at least the next game 1 system down to take that agenda and recomplete it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right. Cool. And then the second impression I got from it, and again, just clarify for me that this is correct, if you chose to put all 3 system points into 1 system, say the translocation system, you use your master code ability, which obviously would have to be the translocation one because it's the only system you've got any points in.
Yeah.
After that game, if you only lost 1 point, it's obviously just 1 point out of the translocation system, which means you've still got 2 active abilities in it, and next game, if you completed your agenda, you could put that point back in and be back up to having the full master code again, effectively. Yeah. In best case scenario, every other game.
Yeah. But it could go horribly wrong and you could lose all 3 points.
Yes, it could. But you're saying that could be true anyway if you put it in all 3 systems. You could still lose all 3 points. Whereas this way, if you have put all 3 in translocation, there's a chance you're still going to be able to keep 1 or 2 of the translocation abilities active. Yeah, so you could pick the one you least wanted to be the one that definitely goes. I suppose that'd be an interesting approach to it. But yes, tell us more, Sharpe, because you made it sound like there was another caveat coming along.
Yeah. So obviously it's got its usual agendas and requisitions and battle traits and stuff. So obviously we've talked about the 3 awakening agendas, but they do have 4 normal agendas that you can obviously take. The awakening agendas, you can only take 1, so you can choose another one from these. So we've got one called the Unending Tally, we've got one called Supremacy Through Annihilation, one called Territorial Imperative, and one called Inescapable Retribution. Which one would you like to hear?
Inescapable Retribution.
Yep. Okay. So at the start of the battle, your opponent must select 1 objective marker in no man's land that represents dynastic treasure. At the end of your movement phase, 1 Necron's character unit from your Crusade army, excluding battle shock units, that is eligible to shoot and within range of that objective marker can attempt to reclaim this treasure. If attempted, that unit cannot shoot or declare a charge unit until your next turn. If this unit is within range of the objective marker at the start of your next command phase, the treasure is reclaimed and that objective marker is removed from the battlefield. The character model that reclaimed the treasure gains 4 XP. After the battle, that character can exchange 1 Crusade relic it possesses with a Necron's Crusade relic if it is eligible for.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah,
now, correct me, did I miss you saying you pick one of the objective markers on the battlefield, or did you add an extra one?
So it's your opponent must select 1 objective marker in no man's land, so it's one of the ones that's already there.
That's interesting. So in like the 9th edition parlance of these kinds of agendas, you would have at the start of the battlefield added an additional objective marker that existed purely for the purposes of this agenda.
Yeah.
Whereas now this is saying you're taking one of the actual mission objectives in No Man's Land.
You're burning it.
Yeah, and then you as a Necron player have the ability to not only complete your agenda, but actually remove that marker from play in terms of like the primary score for the mission.
Yeah. Well, you were earlier talking about how the agendas are not necessarily linked to actually winning the game. It literally is. You could cost yourself the game in order to do that agenda by not scoring any more points on that objective.
Yeah, but also, how characterful is that of a Necron Lord, though? That he's that like self-involved, that he's compromising the greater battle for the claiming of what he deems to be his, dynastic heirloom or heritage or whatever.
Yeah, it's Trazyn, isn't it? It's just Trazyn.
Yeah, it's Trazyn.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like, I can't remember which one it was specifically, but I think there was either a Space Marine agenda or a Tyranid one. I think it was a Space Marine one we discussed recently that also actually converted one of your agendas into some victory points for the game. I think it was if you had was it the Fallen Relic banner or something like that?
Was it the Relic? It was the Relic, and if that person died, you put an objective marker on, and then obviously you got added an agenda where someone from your army had to make sure they claimed
it's the,
that objective at the end.
The Chapter Ancient Relic. Standard.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
So it's a really nice touch, I think, that we're starting to see this small evolution of Crusade rules where the faction rules are having the option of having some small influence on the actual game outcome and the victory points, which is not something we ever saw in 9th edition. They were very separate, siloed pieces of information. So I think that's really cool, and it's notably they're doing it with a very light hand at the moment. There's a very specific scenarios that only have a small influence, but it is still an influence, and I like that. I'm interested to see if they explore this space a bit more in future codexes.
Yes, it's good. I mean the agendas are fairly good. One's based around destroy cults. One of them, the territorial imperative one, you get a Necron's unit gets 1 XP if they destroy a unit that's on an objective, and they also can choose to, if they're on an objective, then and they're not battle shocked, they can choose to conquer that objective marker, and at the end they can't shoot, but at the end of the turn, it's conquered, and that unit gains 2 XP, but each objective can only be conquered once. So you could conquer it, then reclaim the relic.
Conquer it, then claim it.
Yeah. So
how very British Empire of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. We probably should send some of them statues back, shouldn't we? Right. So the requisitions. There are 4 requisitions. They're all 1 requisition point. Viral vectors is when a Necron's battle line unit would gain a battle scar, you can remove it and change it to a flayed one's unit, with all the usual rules about having the same XP and whatnot.
That's cool. So, yeah, again, just briefly for anyone who's perhaps this is some of the first coverage of Crusade content they're listening to and aren't as familiar with the core Crusade rules. Requisitions are basically now the resource management system for upgrading and enhancing your units from between games. So yeah, that one, basically replacing an active Necron unit with a Flayer unit because they've contracted the Flayer virus, is one of these examples of a unit like transitioning from one unit type to another, but maintaining its experience and essentially some of its abilities, transferring over to its new loadout. So in this case, blood crazy, frenzied, mad Necrons.
Yeah. I mean, following on from that one, then the second one is called the slow decay of the self. Purchase this requisition when a noble model would gain a 3rd battle scar. Instead of gaining a 3rd battle scar, that unit instead gains the Destroyer Cult keyword and loses all of its battle scars. In addition, it loses the Leader ability and gains the Lone Operative ability, as well as the ability below, Destroyer Madness. Each time this model makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll.
That's
Ooh, that's really interesting.
Anymore, but can run around killing things.
So you can have like a Destroyer Cryptek or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, the interesting thing about that is it doesn't replace them with a Destroyer Lord. It doesn't, like, say, become a Locust Lord or a Scorpek Lord.
Yeah, because that's what I thought originally. But it's just the same model. With the same
same model.
Yeah.
It just gains Lone Operative. Yeah, it just gains Lone Operative, which is a boon in itself, in a way.
Yeah. Well, you'll see a lot of that, actually. There's quite a bit of when Necrons, when things go wrong, but they also get a bit of a bonus. I don't know whether you remember last year, the Battle Scars did the same thing, didn't they? In the last one.
When they did revamp the Necron Crusade rules for 9th, and they brought in all the White Dwarf rules, they went heavy on the Necrons do battle scars. That's what they do. Yeah. They kind of like, they have pros with significant cons as their scars. That's interesting. But I've got images now. Lovely. We'll find out in a second, because I've got images now of a Catacomb Command Barge that's a destroyer. Imagine the modelling opportunity. You wouldn't need the crew. You just have the torso of the Necron Lord, fused into the barge.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I mean, that would be fun, wouldn't it? So then there's one called Cunning Advisors. That's after a battle in which a Cryptek unit took part in the battle, as well as a noble unit, and you can select that Cryptek unit to be marked for greatness in addition to any other unit that was marked for greatness as a result of the battle. So they get the extra XP. Cool. And then the last one's called Power Reserves Reallocated, and I alluded to this earlier. It's 1 requisition point. Purchase this requisition before a battle. For that battle, you can choose an awakening agenda, even if you do not have any awakening points unallocated. If you complete that awakening agenda after the battle, you can remove the awakening point from a system bonus and reallocate it using that agenda. So actually, if you've allocated your points but actually think, I could probably do with a bit better reanimation, you can take this requisition and do whatever the agenda is, and you can reallocate a point to where you want it to be. So there's a bit of flexibility in there. You're not stuck to one build.
Yeah, that's how you can reassign your selected loadouts.
Yeah. So then we've got battle traits, and there's 4 types of battle traits. Those for Necron characters, those from infantry, vehicle and mounted units, and Canoptek units. So we'll have a look at one from each. So you can obviously roll a d6. So if we do the characters, what number would you roll?
5.
5. Endless Legions. At the end of the battle, if this model is part of your Crusade army and it gained 3 or more XP, excluding XP gained from marked for greatness, you gain 1 requisition point.
Cool.
Oh, okay. So just by having your character do things, you gain requisition points. That's
and if
earning free XP to gain a requisition is quite a good exchange rate.
It is, and if you think about what all the awakening agendas were, like if you pick it for your warlord, who's probably going to pick them up anyway because you're reanimating and getting loads of wounds back, chances are you're going to get that 3x that 3 XP, and therefore you're going to get your requisition point, aren't you? Which is really good, I think. Infantry units, we've got the Will to Serve, Engrammatic Imprinting, and Undying Revenants. So we'll go with Undying Revenants because I think it's the best one. Each time you make a reanimation protocol roll for this unit, add 1 to the result.
Oh,
so you could see that's good, and then you could sort of proc that off the reanimation systems and get another one added to it each turn. So all of a sudden these warriors won't die.
Yep.
So the vehicle and mounted units, we've got hypergrav field manipulation, which adds 2 inches to the move. The spectral disassembly targeters, ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit have the ignores cover ability, and the subdual protocols. While the unit's battle shocked, half the objective control characteristics of models in this unit instead of changing it to 0, which I think is a good one as well.
Pretty handy.
Yeah,
especially. Does that say rounding up, rounding down?
It doesn't, so I'm assuming it follows the usual. But if you've got a vehicle on an objective on the backfield that's taken some wounds and it's forced a battle shock, because you know the fairly standard thing is to have like a big doomsday arc at the backfield, isn't it? At the minute, so having an OC of 2 rather than nothing is really, really useful.
Yeah.
And then we've got Canoptek units at the end. So we've got Guardian constructs. While a friendly Cryptek unit is on the battlefield, each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack, reroll a wound roll of 1. So I think that's pretty good. Cryptek just has to be on the battlefield, doesn't have to be near them.
Cool.
Optimized aggressors. You can reroll advance and charge rolls made for this unit. I can see that would be really good for Wraiths.
I mean, so is that just for Canoptek units?
It is Canoptek units. So spiders, scarabs, that kind of thing, yeah. Obviously, the big Canoptek, the big shooty thing, that's got a little bit better now.
I think that is the sub-faction bonus for the Canoptek core, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So they reroll 1s, but if they're in the power, it's like the Shadow of Chaos, exactly the same rule. But if you're within the power, whatever it's called for the army, then you reroll all hits. So that Canoptek Doomstalker now, which is likely to be stood in your deployment zone and always in power, is rerolling all hits all of a sudden now, all the time, which makes it a significantly better model than it ever has been.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then self-replicator nodes is the last one. Once per turn, one unit from your Crusade army with this battle trait can change the result of its reanimation protocols roll to 3. So you get the automatic 3 wounds back.
Cool.
So that's pretty good. We move on to battle scars now, and there's not as many battle scars for Necrons. In fact, the rule book has you roll a d6, and if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, you take the battle scar from the book. But if it's 4, 5, or 6, they say take a battle scar from the main Crusade rules. So
the Tyranid one,
the Space Marines one had loads of them. Yeah, but this isn't so good. But it does mean that we can talk about all of them quite easily. So if it's a noble unit and it takes a Necron battle scar, then you add 1 to the strength and attacks characteristics of melee weapons equipped by the unit, and the unit has the lone operative ability and loses the leader ability.
Whoa.
That's a battle scar.
That's a battle scar, yes.
Yeah.
So it can't lead the unit anymore.
Oh, it's quite significant.
It suddenly becomes pretty nasty. Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, because you lose the buffs that it might be given to the unit, and then most Necron characters do give quite a good buff. So,
and is it the what you would call the core detachment that was also gives a buff if any character is leading? Any Necron.
Yeah, you got +1 to shoot, didn't you? That's still the same.
So it might be the case that if you, as I'm sure you might continue to tell us shortly, but if there's a couple more of these battle traits that result in characters losing leader and gaining lone operative, that might be a scenario where you switch away from that detachment and sort of lean into a different one, because then you're not losing so much bonus from having all these lone operative characters running around.
Yeah, I think that will work really well. So destroy cult units. Their battle scar is called Mindless Reaper. And this one has two parts. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, you can reroll the hit roll. But you would worsen the leadership and objective control characteristics of this unit by 1. So then, I mean, it doesn't sound like a massive negative to me for destroy cult units to lose a bit of OC, but.
Well, so importantly, are most destroyer cult units only OC 1 to begin with?
I think they probably are, yes.
Because that will be the
then.
Big clincher.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just you're less likely to hold it, you'll be moving to a situation where you can't hold objectives. Or contest either. They'll be super killy.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's I like it because there's a negative and a positive to all of these.
Yeah. How am I going to contest objectives now? By making sure you are absolutely dead.
Yes.
That's how I'm going to contest it. But I'm not going to claim it.
Yeah. Other Necron units then, they have engrammatic degradation. Each time you target this unit with a stratagem, reduce that stratagem's cost by 1 CP for that usage.
Okay.
But this unit cannot fall back or advance.
Oh, that's quite bad.
Yes, yeah, but there are some quite nasty 2 CP stratagems that you can use.
Can that reduce stratagems to 0? Does it specify it can or can't do that?
Yeah, it just says reduce that stratagem's cost by 1 CP.
Cool.
So I'm assuming that if it's a 1 CP strategy, you're getting it for free.
Of course, it will have to be a battle tactic stratagem now.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If as probably most people do, if you are opting to play by like the sort of core gameplay FAQs, even if you're outside of competitive play, then yes, that would be sort of limited to battle tactic stuff. But that's still pretty good. I mean, if nothing else, the command reroll is a battle tactic, I believe.
Yep,
it is. Yes.
Yeah. So if you felt like you weren't going to use the command reroll anywhere else, you could use a free command reroll on one of these battle scarred units. Which again, I feel like I have to stress these are battle scars. Like these aren't meant to be the negatives on your unit.
Yeah.
And you're talking about getting free stratagems.
Yeah. So just flicking through because I like I've said, I'm going to play the Canoptic Court to start off with, and they have a 2 CP battle tactic stratagem, where if it's a Cryptek unit, so you'd have to have a Cryptek attached to it, but you give it to the unit, it's 2 CP, and it gives all your models devastating wounds. So reducing that to 1 CP with a unit of Immortals who are, if you're doing the Canoptic Court, they're rerolling 1s or rerolling all hits. If you're in the power, whatever it's called, and then if you've put a Plasmancer in there, they're getting critical hits on 5s, and obviously they have sustained 2 with all their Tesla carbines. So you're rerolling everything, fishing for 5s, and getting 3 hits rather than 1, and then devastating wounds on that for 1 CP. That's a pretty nasty combination of things to do. But you can't fall back or advance. So
yeah, I was gonna say that's the payoff, isn't it? It's like, okay, that unit probably isn't going to be advancing all that often unless it was attempting to reach an objective marker, in which case you're not bothered because you're probably not shooting that turn, you know.
Yeah.
But the key one really is the whole can't fall back.
Yeah, you're staying in combat.
Yeah, good luck firing those fancy guns while you're in combat with 20 Gretchen.
Yes.
Yeah. And
that is true.
Imagine how many Gretchen must have died in order to get past that volley and get those 21s in.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, I'm really glad actually that the sort of like secondary theme to Necron Crusade rules has maintained this idea that actually they go really hard on battle scars for both having big pros and cons associated with them.
Well, I've got one more, and I've left this one till last because I think this has got the best trade-off between what you get and what you lose. So for Canoptech units, so we're talking scarabs, spiders, wraiths, which are one of the big units that have come up in this codex. So you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in this unit. Okay, so that's pretty good.
That's good. Yep.
However, this unit cannot use its reanimation protocol ability.
Okay.
Ooh. Yeah, like you say, that is harsh, but also, like, I mean, +1 attack is how good is that for the Wraiths? Is that really good, or is it like not worth it to lose that on reanimation?
I'm not so sure I would particularly want it, but yeah, I mean, obviously the unit of 6 Wraiths, I think they have 4 attacks each normally, so it goes up to 30 attacks across the unit. It's -2 damage, hitting on 4s. So that's with claws. I think that's the profile. So I mean they'll hit hard. They just might fade away and not reanimate, which is obviously what you want. But if you're going to go fully thematic, then that might be what you've got. Not such an issue on scarabs, I would imagine, with their 4 wounds, losing their reanimation. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice trade-off, isn't it? The whole Necron thing seems to be you can get lots of bonuses, but there's probably a kick in the teeth somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah, you allocate all your points, but if you use the big one, you might not have any points left. Okay, you throw your warriors into battles, and they get battle scars. They get a little bit better, but they also get a little bit worse in a different way. So there's lots of things to think about when you're sort of building up your army. And I think thematically, you'd keep them in, wouldn't you? Because you'd be like, well, this is my unit of Necron warriors. They're a bit... I think they've taken one beating too many. You'll find that they can do lots of tactical things really, really well, apart from move fast or run away, which they're just not very good at.
It seems like there's a lot of devil's bargains, isn't there, in these Crusade rules?
Yes.
Which is
programming gone wrong.
Yeah, a really, really fun concept, actually. Cool. Well, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, Sharpe, but the only other thing left to cover off is perhaps a few highlighted Necron Crusade relics. Do we have some of those?
There's not too many, actually. There's only 4 relics. And then there's some badges as well. Remember in the new codexes, the Crusade have got badges, so I'll talk you through them as well.
The Crusade achievements.
Yeah. So the Artificer relic for Necrons is called the Godpire Mantle. Models in the Bearer's unit have the Stealth ability, which I think is quite good.
Yeah, it's good.
And then we've got race. Yeah, absolutely. yeah. So you'd have to put it on a Technomancer. But that would work. Antiquity relics, the Tachyon Field Phase Inducer. The bearer has the Deadly Demise D3 ability. In addition, select one of the bearer's melee weapons, add 2 to the strength and attacks characters to that weapon, and that weapon has the lethal hits ability.
Yeah. It's fun.
So
that's a fun bunch of extra rules.
Well on a character. And then there's also the Orb of Eternity. So while the bearer is leading a unit, each time that unit's reanimation protocols activate, it reanimates 3 wounds instead of D3 wounds. So you get the flat 3 every time.
Nice.
Which, if you obviously mix it in with some of the other bonuses you could get, that's obviously going to reanimate units pretty quickly. And then we have one legendary relic called the Casket of Heshkefnet.
Okay.
Once per battle, at the start of your command phase, select one unit from your opponent's army until the start of your next command phase. Each time a model from your Crusade army makes an attack that targets the enemy unit, you can re-roll the hit roll. Yes, it's Necron Oath of Moment.
Hey.
But for them, it's a legendary relic.
It's a legendary relic, not a rule that you can have every turn, every game.
Then again, admittedly, if Space Marines were reanimating every turn, every game, that would also be a bit of a kick in the teeth.
That would be a little bit broken, wouldn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're the best relics I've ever seen, but they had a bit of theme in there, don't they?
Yeah,
they had a bit of theme.
Decent, all things considered. I mean, giving a unit stealth is legitimately good.
I think my favourite Tachyon field phase.
I do miss the old translocation comet cape from White Dwarf. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, that was
a good one.
The Super Saiyan one.
Yeah,
just flying across the battlefield, punching people. Yeah,
that would have been fun to see come back.
Well, maybe it will in the 60% halfway through the edition when they decide to change a few. Yeah, and okay. The last thing is just the Crusade badges, and these are just the new things that come in there. So there's obviously like a bronze, silver, and a gold type approach. So the bronze one's called an Awakened Tomb, and you get that if you've won at least 2 battles and you've used one of your Master System abilities once. So in order to get your badges, you've got to build up and then use a Master System, and then obviously you might lose some awakening points and start again.
Sure.
The Conquering Tomb, you've used a Master System ability 3 or more times. At least one character from your order battle has reached the heroic rank, and you've won at least 6 battles. And then finally, the Subjugating Tomb gold medal is you've used a Master System ability 10 or more times. At least one character has reached the legendary rank, and you've won at least 10 battles.
Nice.
I mean, using the Master System ability 10 or more times is probably quite tricky.
I mean, if you'd done that, you'd hope you'd have won 10 battles.
Yeah, well, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Because was that a minimum of 30?
Well, it depends how many you lose, doesn't it? So you could, if you were lucky and you only lost 1 point, you could still keep using them game after game. It's if you lose 3 points and then all of your awakening points get taken off, then you're going to have to build them up again to be able to use one. So it might not be 30, but I would imagine it'll be more than 10.
Yeah, you'd assume so.
Yeah, that very much sounds like the achievement for completed Codex Necrons.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Next, what's next?
Oh, excellent. I mean, it is fair to say that I think the Necron Crusade rules have had a very much deserved glow up from their previous incarnation.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who plays Space Marines and Necrons, having talked about these 2 codexes with you recently, I feel both of them have got a significant glow up, considering what was offered in the last edition, which is nice. And they obviously got the mojo around about the 5th or 6th codex in 9th, didn't they?
I think they really hit their groove with the Dark Eldar Codex when they introduced the Gangs of Camorra sort of system that was going on in the background. Everything from that point onwards seemed to just be excellent, sort of like Crusade concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all had a sort of mini game attached, didn't they?
Yeah, which Space Marines and Necron players weren't originally allowed to play.
No, not particularly. You could turn a character into a dreadnought if you wanted. That was about as exciting as it got.
Well, I think it means more interesting times ahead for Necrons, particularly since it would seem like sometime early in the new year is when we're going to be getting the Crusade Pariah Nexus book dropping.
Yeah.
Because they had first announced that sort of 4-6 weeks back, something like that. And every week I keep looking in the Sunday preview to see, is it going to be on pre-order next week? Is it going to be on pre-order next week? And so far, no avail. All quiet in the Pariah Nexus.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to seeing when that does land, because it means a few interesting things for us here on Narrative Wargamer. One, it gives us more Crusade missions to play with. which means some more interesting options for battle reports on the channel. It means hopefully I can add some more options to the list of missions for the Crucible of War. And it will also mean a selection of new lore information to troll through and create another 40k fun facts quiz from.
Awesome.
So I'm very much looking forward to the next Crusade book to drop, and obviously we can, review the book as a whole and get our impressions of it and see where our Crusade supplements are going in 10th edition, because I enjoyed Tyrannic War. I think it's been great. I've still plumbing the depths of it for fun things to put out in lore reels on the channel and over on Instagram. So yeah, I think hopefully 2024 is looking like it's going to be a good year for Narrative Wargamer and for all our fun narrative-based 40k shenanigans.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So all that remains is to say thank you again, Dan, and thank you, Sharpe, for both coming and joining me again tonight.
No problem.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure.
As always, for anyone who this is their first time listening to the show, you can find us at Narrative Wargamer on Instagram. If you are listening to this on a podcasting platform, then you can also find us over on YouTube, where this will have been playing as well for our YouTube subscribers. So you can find us at Narrative Wargamer on YouTube. And Dan, where can people find you as well?
They can find me in various places on the internet.
And in Black Library novels alongside Bad Moon War Bosses.
Yeah, as Red Tooth, or possibly Red_Tooth on Instagram. And
Sharpe, what about yourself? Where can people find you?
Yeah, mainly, pretty much exclusively on Instagram. I'm j.sharp0608, and that's where I put all my hobby material up. I always get a bit worried when people say things like, you can find me all over the internet, because that really worries me about what people have been getting up to.
If you want to find Sharpe in a very specific and understandable part of the internet, you can go find him on Instagram.
Absolutely, yes. Don't go hunting too deep for me.
And then, finally, like I say, if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you want to go over there and check out the channel, you'll find a bunch of other things that we make and put out on the channel, including a recent battle report between me and Dan with my orcs and his Tyranids, which has been very well received and was a lot of fun to produce.
Yep, it was good.
Good fun.
Yeah, that was one of the missions from the Tyrannic War book. So hopefully, like I say, we'll see some Prayer Nexus ones in the future. We've also got a few lore reels up on there now, as well as plenty of other podcast episodes, including some of our classics backlog from recent years. And if you do enjoy what we are producing and would like to see more of it and help support the growth of the channel and the content that we provide, then we do have a Patreon. And you can go join up for that, and you'll get access to our patrons only group chat, where you can chat to all the hosts, and you can bother us anytime you like, and we'll answer any questions you have about anything Warhammer related, pretty much. And it's a good time. We also get shout outs for new patrons on the podcast and a few other little bonus episodes every now and again. So yeah, it really just helps us grow the show, and hopefully the plan is to try and expand equipment and resources and things to sort of up the quality a bit in the near future. So it's all very much appreciated, and we have a big thank you to say to all our current patrons as well. So thank you for supporting us over these past years and getting us to where we are now. So yeah, I think that's everything for tonight, guys. So yeah, just thank you again to everyone for listening, and hopefully we will see you next time. And until then, this has been the Narrative Wargamer Podcast, helping you to discover more ways to play 40k.
Bye.